Hi friends, welcome to a new video of Masters Academy. Second PUC Physics. Solution for Second PUC Physics Supplementary Exam Paper September 2020 Part 2 3 mark questions with solutions. Prepared by Santosh Kumar PK. 19th question. Derive the relation between electric field and electric potential. Answer. Consider two equipotential surfaces A and B with the potential V and V plus delta V as shown in the figure. Here delta V is in the direction of the electric field. So two surfaces A and B, the potential of surface A is V and potential of surface B is V plus delta V. There is a perpendicular distance between A and B, that is delta L. P is the point on B where the electric field is E. Let P be a point on the surface B. Delta L is the perpendicular distance of the surface A from the point P. Imagine that a unit positive charge is moved along this perpendicular from the surface B to A against the electric field. So you are moving a unit positive charge from B to A against the electric field along the perpendicular distance delta L. Now the work done in this process is E into delta L. This work done is equal to the potential difference between the two surfaces, that is VA minus VB. Thus E into delta L is equal to VA minus VB. E into delta L, the potential of VA is V and potential of VB is V plus delta V. So V minus of V plus delta V. So E into delta L is equal to minus delta V. Therefore vector E is equal to minus delta V by delta L. This is the relation between electric field and electric potential. This equation represents that the electric field is in the direction in which the potential decreases steepest. So you may also ask the question in the twisted form, that is, show that the electric field is in the direction in which the potential decreases steepest. This is the answer for that. 20th question. What is a cyclotron? Draw its neat diagram and label the parts. Answer. The cyclotron is a machine to accelerate charged particles or ions to higher energies. Diagram. This is the diagram of the cyclotron. Here you are having D1 and D2. These are the two Ds. This is the point at the center where a charged particle is kept. These two Ds are connected to an oscillator. The magnetic field represents it is coming out of the paper. This is the deflection plate where the charged particle after accelerating will be deflected through this deflecting plate to the exit port. Through this exit port the charged particle will emerges out. Next, 21. How would you convert a galvanometer into an ammeter? Explain. Answer. A galvanometer can be converted into an ammeter by connecting a suitable low resistance in parallel to the galvanometer. So let us consider this is a galvanometer. This RG represents the resistance of the galvanometer. To convert this galvanometer into ammeter, you have to connect a low resistance called shunt resistance in parallel with the galvanometer. Now here RS be a small resistance called shunt resistance connected in parallel with the galvanometer coil, so that most of the current passes through the shunt resistance. The current coming in this direction, here since it is having a large resistance, whenever you connect a small resistance, the maximum current will pass through this small resistance. Now the resistance of this arrangement is equal to, since these two are in parallel, the effective resistance in parallel is 1 by Rg plus 1 by Rs, which is equal to Rg into Rs divided by Rg plus Rs. Or the expression for shunt resistance is given by Rs is equal to Rg into Rs divided by Rg. Next, 22nd one. Describe Faraday and Henry coil and bar magnet experiment to demonstrate the electromagnetic induction. Answer. Figure shows a coil C1 connected to a galvanometer G. When the north pole of a bar magnet is pushed towards the coil, the pointer in the galvanometer deflects, indicating the presence of electric current in the coil. So here this is the coil bar experiment diagram. C1 is the coil which is connected to a galvanometer. and this ns, it represents the bar magnet in which the north pole is acting towards the coil. So now whenever this north pole of the bar magnet is pushed towards the coil, then the galvanometer shows a deflection. That means whenever the bar magnet is coming towards the coil, there will be a change in magnetic flux. This change in magnetic flux induces an EMF, that is nothing but the current. Therefore, the galvanometer shows a deflection, which indicates there is a presence of current in the coil. So whenever this north pole is taken away from the magnet, then there will be a deflection, but it will be in the opposite direction, which indicates there is a reversal of current. Similarly, whenever the south pole is brought towards the coil, there will be a deflection, but in the opposite direction, that representing for the north pole. Now the galvanometer does not show any deflection when the magnet is held stationary. When the magnet is pulled away from the coil, the galvanometer shows deflection in the opposite direction, which indicates the reversal of current's direction. Similarly, when the south pole of the bar magnet is moved towards or away from the coil, the deflection in the galvanometer is opposite to that observed when the north pole for similar movements. Further, the deflection and hence current is found to be larger when the magnet is pushed towards or pulled away from the coil faster. Similarly, when the bar magnet is held fixed and the coil C1 is moved towards or away from the magnet, the same effect is observed, but when the magnet and coil are held stationary, there will be no deflection in the galvanometer. Then what is the conclusion? The conclusion is that the relative motion between the magnet and the coil, that is responsible for generation, that is induction of electric current in the coil. This is the Faraday's and Henry bar magnet and coil experiment. Next question. What is total internal reflection? Mention two conditions for total internal reflection. Answer. When a ray of light travels from a denser medium to a rarer medium and gets incident at the interface of two media at an angle greater than the critical angle, then the ray gets totally reflected back to the same medium. This phenomenon is called total internal reflection. Then the condition for total internal reflection, there are two important conditions. First one, a ray of light should travel from denser medium to rarer medium. It should always travel from a denser medium to a rarer medium. And second is, the angle of incidence must be always greater than the critical angle for a given pair of media. If the angle of incidence is less than the critical angle, then there will be no total internal reflection. Next, 24th. What is polarization of light? Mention two methods of producing plane polarized light. Answer. The phenomenon by which the vibrations of light waves in a beam are restricted to a particular plane is called polarization. That is, we know that light contains vibrations in all directions, but when the vibrations of the light waves are restricted to a particular plane, that phenomenon is called as polarization. Then methods of producing plane polarized light are here. First one, polarization by scattering, polarization by reflection, polarization by refraction, polarization by double refraction, polarization by selective absorption or dichroism. I have given 5 methods of producing plane polarized light. They have asked any two. You can write any two of these 5. Next, 25th. Derive an expression for radius of electron in the nth Bohr orbit of hydrogen atom. Answer. Consider an electron revolving around the nucleus of hydrogen atom. Now, whenever there is an electron revolving around the nucleus, there is a force of attraction between the revolving electron and the nucleus. This electrostatic force will be equal to the centripetal force, so that the electron will be in its orbit. That is, the electrostatic force is equal to centripetal force. For an electron in the nth orbit, the electrostatic force is given by 1 by 4 pi epsilon into E square by Rn square, and centripetal force is mVn square by Rn. So 1 Rn and Rn cancels. Rn, when it comes to numerator, it becomes mVn square into Rn, and it is E square by 4 pi epsilon naught. Now, from Bohr's second postulate, we know that the angular momentum is given by Ln is equal to mVn into Rn, that is equal to nh divided by 2 pi, where n is an integer. Now, squaring m square vn square rn square is equal to n square h square divided by 4 pi square. You call this as equation 2. Equation 2 divided by equation 1. M square Vn square Rn square divided by M square Vn square Rn. You will get M Rn. Vn square cancels is equal to N square H square by 4 pi square. This, when it comes to denominator, it changes from E square by 4 pi epsilon to 4 pi epsilon by E square. Therefore, the radius of nth stationary orbit is given by Rn is equal to 4 pi and 4 pi cancel, n square h square epsilon naught, that is epsilon naught n square h square divided by pi m e square. This is the expression for radius of nth stationary orbit of electron. Next question. What are optoelectronic devices? Name any two optoelectronic devices. Answer. The semiconductor devices in which charge carriers are generated by light or photons are called optoelectronic devices. The name itself indicates optoelectronic, that is, opto means light, electronic means it is nothing but the charge developed. So, charge carriers are generated by using light or photons. So, some of the optoelectronic devices are, first one photodiodes, second one light emitting diodes, that is LED, and third one photovoltaic devices, also known as solar cells. The 5 more questions of this supplementary paper September 2020 will be uploaded in next video. Dear friends, if you find this video useful, then please subscribe to our channel and share it to your friends. Thank you.